Howdy everybody, thanks for tuning in for another cruise with Smooth. Cutting grass when it's 40 degrees outside, that'll make you tough. I am currently wearing 2 pairs of pants, 2 shirts, a jacket, and I had on 2 pairs of my Kevlar work gloves and a toboggan and my Carhartt jacket, and I still got a little cold. Because when you're sitting riding around on that mower, which will hit 10 miles an hour cutting grass, it'll just that wind will just go right through whatever you got on. So, one of the people that I cut grass for, my old piano teacher, I've known this guy 25 years now, I guess, which makes me sound way older than I am. Unfortunately, I think that he is starting to develop the early symptoms of dementia or Alzheimer's. But he's still an excellent piano player. He's got a little Steinway upright that he's had for nearly 50 years. Still plays amazing. It's the piano that he had in his house that he taught me to play on. And whenever I have the time while I'm over there, I always stop in for a few minutes and visit for a while, and we'll talk and play a little piano. And I tell you what, I enjoy playing. I play in my church's praise band, and this is not bragging. I don't even like it too much when it happens, but I do get complimented a lot when they do an older Southern gospel style song, and I can let loose a little bit more on the keys. But was listening to him for a couple minutes today, and I'm just sitting there like everybody else at church on most weeks, just wow. He's getting forgetful, but he ain't forgot how to play. He's still very good, and I've just always enjoyed watching him play because he's so good, and he and I both enjoy the same style of music when it comes to what we play on the piano. He's just better at it than I am. So it's always interesting when you go visit him. And I've been playing music for 25 years now, I think. Been playing piano. So I've known him for quite a while, and I took lessons for 10 or 12 years from him. And many a recital. A lot of memories in his living room. He's a very kind person, but I remember I used to drive him crazy. Sight reading for me is painfully slow, and I was not a patient child when I was learning anything. And so when I was taking piano lessons, once I had the basic idea of how a song sounded, I would just start sight reading the lead note and filling in the blanks with everything else. And I remember one of his his favorite things to say to me is like, you could play that in front of 1,000 people, and the only people that would know that you screwed up was you, me, and God, but that's wrong. He used to crack my mother up with some of the things he'd say when I'd pull stunts like that. She thought it was funny. I drove him crazy. So, I experienced my first gas station outage today. Come on, turn. I went to one of my favorite gas stations to go to, the one that I was talking about the other day, where I filled up for like $9 in my car. Went by there and they were out of gas. That's the first time I think I've ever had that happen. So I went on ahead and drove to my yards, and the truck is about empty. I got 1/8 of a tank-ish left. So I'm currently headed to a gas station, go fill this up, and I'll leave the mower alone. I only got to cut mine before I got to get back out again. But it's always a treat to see him, especially when he plays piano, because he is such a good piano player from one musician to another. I hate to see him in the mental shape that he's in with Alzheimer's or dementia, because he's definitely in the early onset stages of it. You can just tell, because he repeats himself sometimes, or asks questions multiple times sometimes. So he's definitely got it. And I feel sorry for his wife having to do that, because she's not in the best of physical health to help him out, unfortunately. Looks like all these guys are doing something I need to do. Get some fuel saved up for a generator. Got 2 guys up here blocking all the pumps, and they're filling up, between the 2 of them, 10 different 5-gallon cans for gas and diesel. And I don't know how you manage to block all 4 pumps with 2 trucks and no trailers. I can do it rather easily with the mowing rig, because you wouldn't think it, but truck and trailer, a full 4-door F-150 and a little 12-14 foot trailer, it's the same size as a school bus. Alright, I'll be back, folks. Hang tight. Alright, I'm back. That's the cheapest I have ever filled a truck up when the gauge said just about empty. Cost me $20 in pocket change to fill up today, which is fun. The most I've ever paid to fill up, I used to have an old diesel dually that had dual fuel tanks, and I am a glutton for punishment when it comes to fuel prices in a lot of vehicles. I've owned more V8s than I've owned any other vehicle, I think. And if nothing else, I daily drove a V8 over 100 miles round trip for work 5 days a week. So, but when I had that diesel dually, when I ran both tanks down to a quarter tank, it cost me $140, $150 to fill up, and cutting grass, I was burning that a week. $1.07 a gallon. Truck gets lousy mileage when you're towing. It's not set up. From the factory, this old truck was never set up to be a good towing vehicle. It was just set up to cruise. It has the wrong gears set up, and so when you're towing with it, it just gets lousy fuel mileage because the gearing's wrong, so the engine's either spinning too slow to pull or too fast to be efficient. And when it's too slow to pull, it's constantly shifting between third and fourth gear, so I just leave it in third. It likes that pretty good, but 10 to 12 to the gallon is about all you're going to get when you're towing. The worst I've gotten out of this specific truck was pulling a much heavier trailer. I got 7. So, I was wondering something the other day. I've listened to quite a lot of news on coronavirus lately, and there are some people that are saying that there's no good decision to make here. Because if you lock everything down till this has completely run its course and there are no cases in the states that are active, that's fantastic. But you're talking several more months of this, which probably cannot be sustained for a multitude of reasons. From take a little podunk town that doesn't have cases in a state. Why should they be on lockdown when you've got cases in a big city? People aren't going to be happy about it. People aren't going to be able to continue to afford to do it. The government can't keep just writing checks forever out of money that's worth nothing. So there are no real good decisions to make here. So basically, at some point we have to decide what, as a nation, we have to decide what will we tolerate. Will we tolerate what kind of second wave infection when we all come out of this? Will we tolerate? What kind of economic recession will we tolerate? On and on and on and on. I know there's a lot of people that are hurting way worse than I am right now, and there have been a lot of people hurting way worse than I have been this whole time. So very in the government, all the decisions that they're making, you can tell due to some of the questions that they won't answer, they're operating with a half full data set on all this. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they know for sure, and they know know there's some things that they don't know. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what ends up happening in the long term as far as getting things back to normal. You know, one of the things that I heard that really irritates me, there have been numerous persons in authority, from governors to mayors, that have violated the separation of church and state, which they've all caught blowback from that, either from local, people just, calling in their line and giving them static, up to attorney generals saying you can't do that, things like that. There was a governor that tried to ban all Easter services, threatening arrests, fines, and criminal penalties, whatever that means. There was a mayor locally to me that tried to do that and was going to have police record license plate numbers so that they could get IDs and make them quarantine. These were all drive-in type services, by the way. But here's the way I look at it. If every church in the United States today decided that they were going to do full-on, in-person church services, how many people would actually show up? If they weren't going to do, a live stream, or they weren't going to do a drive-in, if they were opening the building back up, everybody come in, we're going to do the meet and greet, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to sit right next to each other, how many people would actually show up? I don't think it would be a lot. I think the people that would show up the most would be the youngest among church members. People that their parents aren't that old yet, so they're not in the high-risk category. They're not old yet, so they're not in the high-risk category. They don't have kids, so that's not a thing, and they can just avoid seeing their grandparents. I think you would have basically driving age to 25 showing up. Anybody older than that probably wouldn't be there unless they just didn't care. But I don't think that a lot of people would show up. So I don't think there's a huge need in government interference. I remember when our church decided to do the live streaming and then drive-in type services, there was a lot of thought and prayer that went into that, and they decided basically that they wanted to abide by the guidelines that have been coming out of the CDC, and they wanted to watch out for the older members. So that's why they did it. And they didn't want to risk having government come crashing through the door like the Kool-Aid Man. And another thing that's really ticking me off, and I don't know if all this is in the same place, but there are jails that are emptying out right now due to this, because they don't want the jail population to get it. Because when it gets into a confined area where there's a bunch of people, it spreads like wildfire. See nursing homes in New York City. That's just a fact. It does. But when you empty out jails of people that broke a law, and then there has been no law signed to my knowledge about coronavirus, it's just guidelines and then executive orders coming down from governors and mayors, and you make churchgoers criminals, you're an idiot and a moron and probably they should be unelected. I think that the jails should have additional safety resources provided to them to mitigate the likelihood of infection in the jail and to mitigate the likelihood of transmission within the jail. But I don't think that criminals should be getting out of jail because there's a chance they could get sick. The only people in the jails that I would have sympathy for would be the guards. You know, now there's some crimes that I think the punishment's stupid for. I think a lot of marijuana offenses and possession charges, I think a lot of those where they've got mandatory minimums and it doesn't take into account, you know, prior history or anything like that. I think mandatory minimums are stupid. But I don't think that just because, you know, like if you were in jail for something, you know, bank robbery, whatever, and all of a sudden there's a pandemic, you shouldn't be let out. I think you should sit there, and if they have to go into lockdown mode until this is over to make sure that you don't contaminate the guards don't contaminate you, you don't contaminate your fellow inmates. Do what you got to do to get through it, but don't turn the prisoners loose. That's my opinion. But what do I know? I've got to jump out of the truck here just real quick and grab something out of the back. I will be right back. I ain't even gonna turn off the stream. You're just gonna be bored. Sorry about that, folks. I need my caffeine. I was getting thirsty while I was talking. Anyway, you know, realistically, you hear stories about the evils of the prison industrial complex. That series Orange is the New Black, I take issue with some of it. Like, it was a good show, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of it was political correctness haymaking. I think, could be wrong. I thought it was interesting how many lesbian couples that there were lesbians there were in the series. You of course had to have the transgender. The corruptness of the CERT team or whatever it was that went in and one of the and I'm spoiler alert. I will spoil all the things for you. The crookedness of the CERT team that went in after the riot and cleaned up, that blamed the one officer's death on someone that never did it, never killed anybody, and she got a rough shakedown in court because the CERT team agreed to stick together when they killed the guy and she didn't. I don't think that Orange is the New Black is a model of the majority of prisons, but I do think that it sheds light on a lot of the issues with the setup and the way it's run. One of the things that I think is probably coming out of this, especially if there's, you know, prisons that are emptying due to concerns of this, especially if they're contract prisons. I think that a lot of that is they can get away with due to the unique circumstances. They can get away with shipping their inmates out and make a couple more bucks, or save a couple bucks due to not having to have that bed and everything else for them. That's my opinion. Could be wrong. I just had a great thought. In the movie Shawshank Redemption, there were it showed the warden having his inmates working quite a bit. Don't know if how realistic that is. I remember my grandparents, they had this really old, well-built couch that my great-grandfather bought and actually had to ride a horse and buggy to the local train station to go pick it up when it arrived. That's how old this thing was. And it was faring very well structurally, but it had been reupholstered a number of times, and one time that it was reupholstered by an inmate work program. They charged $2 a man hour for the inmate work program. Everybody was happy to do the work because it gave them something to do while they were locked up. It was great work quality. That couch was reupholstered when I was very young, and it stayed with that cover on it until the house that it was in caught fire. So it had that cover on it for 20 years or so. But I just thought of the perfect job for inmates: call centers. Think about it. Right now, all the places that have overseas call centers, they do that because of the low labor rates. And so they contract out with these overseas companies. The only thing you need to do is put phones in the rooms, have them locked out via passcode so they can't, break prison rules or what have you. Or even have them set up where the only thing they can do is answer and put a call on hold. And get, their supervisor over there to deal with it. But think about it, you could pay an inmate $1 an hour or less to work. I think the inmate work program at the county that I used to live in, they paid like 60-70 cents an hour. So you could pay next to nothing for it. I think that'd be a great way to because the inmates could learn a marketable skill dealing with, stuff over the phone, call center type stuff, and you could save a bunch of companies money and bring jobs back to the U.S. I think that's a win all the way around. So, man, I've talked about everything today. From vehicles to pianos to being a kid to inmates and everything else. But anyway, I don't think that emptying out the prisons during this particular point in time, especially with the potential for upheaval everywhere, I think that's a dumb idea. I think they should be reinforcing the prison security to try to prevent escape, because it'd be an ideal time to do it because there's not going to be as many guards in there likely. I've gone on long enough. I may have set a new record for the longest single video breaks to get gas and get a drink. So hope y'all stay safe. I'd love to hear from you. Notification bell, like, share, comment, subscribe. Y'all take care. Thanks for tuning in for